Hello and welcome. What is the Murphyverse? It is an ongoing series of limited series, primarily written and illustrated by Sean Murphy, although other writers and artists have done work in this self-contained universe. To date, there are 7 completed miniseries, and according to Wikipedia, there are an additional 6 series planned, so it's a rather expansive mini-universe. Overall, it's an alternate take on Batman, Batman-related characters, and the established mythology of Gotham. If you go in with a very definitive idea of how all these elements are to be portrayed, then you're likely not going to enjoy what you get. One has to immerse themselves in the story being told, and try not to get annoyed at the multiple inconsistencies with the mainstream Batman world, because there are a lot of differences. And one difference, Jason Todd specifically, was an actual mistake that was integrated into continuity. Once DC decided to continue beyond the original miniseries, Sean Murphy tweeted 6 rules concerning the Murphyverse. However, the tweet has been subsequently deleted. Fortunately, multiple websites reported on the content of this tweet. The rules are, quote, 1. When someone dies, they stay dead. 2. Every book comes out on time. 3. No narration balloons, unless it's a voiceover in a flashback. 4. No excessive amounts of variants to burden comic shops. At most, there will be 2, the main cover and the variant for the passionate collector. 5. There will be at least 1 awesome vehicle in each book. 6. No complicated tie-ins to other series or events. White Knight will be easy to get into, whether you read comics or not. Unquote. Some have suggested at least 1, possibly 2 of the rules were a dog whistle to a specific portion of fandom. Thus, the tweet was deleted to avoid controversy. As far as I could determine, Murphy hasn't addressed why he deleted the tweet, so its removal is an area of speculation. In my opinion, there are a few rules that are beyond Murphy's reach, so to speak, such as Rules 2, 4, and 6. Those are editorial or publisher decisions. Certainly, creators should ensure the work is completed on time, that's a given. But there are delays that occur outside of the creative process, and that's something creators have no control over. As for Rules 4 and 6, well, Murphy can object all he wants to variants and tie-ins, and then resign from future projects. But those are areas beyond his influence. That's just business, folks. To be fair, these rules do hold true, although the first rule is stretched mighty thin later on. Regardless, it's possible it was gently suggested to Murphy in private that he was flexing a bit too much and assuming power he did not have. At best, these are guidelines Murphy may adhere to, but DC is under no obligation to consider them whatsoever. It's time for a quick, self-promotional insert. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. I also have a Patreon and a very active Discord available. Details are down below. Thank you for your time. Personally, I avoided the Murphyverse for a while, partially because it was Bat-centric and that doesn't always grab my attention, but also because of the title, White Knight. It's a modern buzzword that has a less than savory connotation. Quite honestly, I thought it indicated some critique of the current social climate, and I presumed it probably contained some condescending stereotypes with brutally obvious flaws. Like many of you, I don't actively seek morally superior diatribes in my entertainment. That gets very tiring very fast, and at its core, it's usually some terrible storytelling. I think the average person shares that perspective. I'm not making a radical statement here. Anyway, back to White Knight. For those that dislike spoilers, let me cut to the chase. The Murphyverse is a soft recommendation. Had I read this at a different time, or in a different mood, I might have got annoyed at some of the inconsistencies with established Batman lore, or the dramatic character changes that arise. Perhaps, because I had no expectations, I was surprised the writing was reasonably decent for the material. Overall, if you're precious about Batman continuity, then skip the Murphyverse. Once you hit page 2 of the first miniseries, you'll be raging. From this point forward, it's hard to discuss the series without tons of spoilers, so consider yourself warned. White Knight takes place deep into Batman's career. He's well established and has an extended Bat family. The story begins with Batman imprisoned in Arkham and being approached by Jack Napier, the air quotes sane persona of the Joker. It then hard cuts to a year ago, with Batman chasing the Joker through Gotham. This chase ends with Batman brutally beating Joker before forcing pills down his throat. These pills seem to cure the Joker and allow Jack Napier to take control. Public outrage over Batman's behavior begins. The media debates the merits of Batman's war on crime and the Joker's sudden personality change. While in custody, Napier argues that Batman is just as dangerous as any of the criminals he brings to justice. Napier admits his past crimes, and due to overwhelming public support, he is released from prison. Napier then begins a political campaign to change Gotham. Naturally, this involves some questionable tactics and manipulation, such as taking control of Gotham's supervillains and staging crimes to illustrate how reckless and unhinged Batman has become. Again, public opinion towards Batman turns to distrust, suspicion, and eventually outright contempt at his violent methods. Even Batman's allies, Nightwing and Batgirl, question his motives. With funding from Napier, the Gotham Police set up an elite task force to handle supercriminals and to capture Batman. After a final, explosive battle with the criminal, Neo Joker, Napier is arrested again for his involvement with the supervillain attacks on Gotham. His medication loses its effectiveness, and he reverts back to the Joker persona. We also learn that Harleen Quinzel was the grand manipulator behind this series of events. In private, to Commissioner Gordon, Batman admits he's a thug that enjoys what he does, before revealing his true identity to Gordon. If it's not obvious, the basic premise of White Knight is reversing the roles of Batman and the Joker. The Joker is the hero, and Batman is the villain. Furthermore, unlike Batman, the Joker acknowledges the damage he does and accepts the consequences of his actions. He recognizes that rampant violence, regardless of intent, contains an unacceptable level of collateral damage. This also reveals a level of passive corruption in the police force, who do nothing to pursue or arrest Batman. So, the police are complicit in Batman's rampage and bear some responsibility for allowing it to continue. That last point, the police being complicit, is not exactly original, but it is fully exploited and developed within White Knight. Along with White Knight, there are a few modern politically charged terms that are frequently used. 1%, SJW, gatekeepers, and the elite, all of which give off an Occupy Gotham vibe. I might even add performative diversity as something gently tucked underneath all this rhetoric. Not to mention, there's an undercurrent of criticism towards the media for justifying and empathizing with both Batman and the Joker. To its credit, neither position, whether critical or empathetic, are wildly to one side or the other in an effort to satirize a specific viewpoint. It's not exactly balanced, but at the same time, these representations aren't continually making ridiculous, easy-to-refute points. The series openly suggests that Batman is one of these elites. As such, everything he does is suspect, because he's a billionaire looking out for the interests of other billionaires. Even though it looks like he's fighting for the common good, in actuality, he only provides justice for some, specifically the interests of the other elites in Gotham. At this point, I have to admit that I'm unsure how much of this subtext was intentional, and how much of it was Murphy simply using the language of the day to make it seem current. It all suggests a critique of certain moral stances, but that critique is murky at best. Overall, it seemed like the explicit intent was to argue that Batman is not a heroic figure. Furthermore, there are unintended consequences that Batman ignores, even though they directly impact the very people he pretends to protect. And for the most part, those people are the disenfranchised lower class. When it comes to characterization, there are some radical differences. Batman is a basic, unrepentant thug. His focus on his mission is everything. There's no argument or action that deters him from arrogantly taking on criminals. He's rather inflexible, which has been the Batman's character since The Dark Knight Returns. Although White Knight turns up the volume on this aspect and keeps it pounding in the background. One of the biggest changes is giving the Joker a name. Although, to be fair, this name was given to the Joker in the 1989 Batman movie. And for the purposes of the story, the Joker needs a name. It also includes the Alan Moore implied character beat, which was codified by Jeff Johns in 3 Jokers, which is, Napier is a failed stand-up comic that became the clown prince of crime. For the record, Moore's implication is based on the Joker's memories, but the Joker is the definition of an unreliable narrator. So saying the Joker is a former, failed comedian with a pregnant wife is a very surface-level read of the Killing Joke. White Knight also makes the Joker an evil, split personality, rather than the living embodiment of anarchy. It suggests the Joker can be managed with medication, and he can be rehabilitated, which presumes the Joker is the result of insanity produced by chemicals in the brain, which he is not, at least not in any halfway decent portrayal of the character. He's the equal and opposite reaction to Batman's brand of authoritarian fascism. He only looks insane because he represents a way of life not influenced by accepted social restraints. These restraints only exist because we all silently agree they do. The Joker points out the absurdity of adhering to rules that have been cultivated by nothing more than centuries of conditioning. Admittedly, that's an ideal representation of the Joker. Most writers approach him as a lunatic. In White Knight, the Joker is also Batman's biggest fan. He's obsessed with him. Furthermore, he's inspired by the Batman, which plays into the theme that Batman's presence results in the rise of superpowered criminals. Not to mention, it's an example of the old phrase, never meet your heroes. Because, ultimately, the Joker is disappointed by Batman and how ineffective his methods are. Another radically changed character is Harley Quinn. In fact, there are two Harleys. There is the original highly intelligent psychopath and the current manic pixie dream girl version. The pixie is the standard enabler, while the original is the woman who wants to bring out the best qualities of Jack Napier. If there's one thing that stands out, it's that all the characters are a combination of all the different takes from all the different media throughout the years. Murphy picks and chooses from all the available sources, not just comic books. So they're all somewhat unique in that respect. At the same time, they're hardly recognizable through their iconic traits. White Knight did all the heavy lifting by establishing the characters, setting, and the dynamics. What follows will refine the foundation and take the evolving ongoing story into unfamiliar territory. So I'm just going to touch upon the major details. Curse of the White Knight goes even further to distance itself from the mainstream Batman lore. To be blunt, it completely rewrites the history of Gotham and the legacy of the Wayne family. It's discovered that Bruce Wayne's heritage is based on a lie. Hundreds of years ago, an ancestor assumed the Wayne name and used that name to become a powerful presence in the newly formed Gotham Village. That's the basics. There are a lot of finer details. One of those finer details is that Jean-Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, is the true Wayne heir. Well, Jean-Paul is the heir to the ancestor that Bruce's ancestor killed before taking his name. It's kind of convoluted, but it does make sense. So again, like the original series, it reinforces the fact that Batman is a criminal. It's in his blood. Both Commissioner Gordon and the Joker meet their end. Barbara Gordon is outed as Batgirl, and Harley Quinn gives birth to twins, one of whom is like Jack Napier, and the other is like Bruce Wayne. Finally, Batman surrenders to the police, and he's thrown in prison. So, this miniseries has a lot of moving parts, and it sets up the direction of the Murphyverse from this point forward. The Von Freeze one-shot fills out the backstory of Mr. Freeze. In my opinion, it's not essential reading, but it is a decent side story. Harley Quinn was written by Sean Murphy's partner, the novelist Katana Collins. It focuses on Harley investigating a murder while trying to raise her twins. It also fills in her backstory and her history with both the Joker and Batman. The mystery itself is not overly compelling, but the evolution of Harleen Quinzel into the first Harley Quinn is quite well done. It works as an origin story and puts a good distance between the character and her mainstream version. This is essential reading, as it's seamlessly integrated into the current status of the Murphyverse, and it provides a lot of character detail. Beyond the White Knight jumps forward 12 years, and it's a very loose adaptation of the cartoon Batman Beyond. Terry McGinnis steals a special batsuit and becomes the new Batman under the supervision of Bruce Wayne. It's here that Murphy stretches his first rule very, very thin. The Joker returns as an artificial intelligence hologram that only Bruce Wayne can see or hear. And in my opinion, it's a deus ex machina that is not great. In fact, the entire miniseries has some messy, melodramatic elements, although it ends on a plot beat that ensures its future. Bruce Wayne is approached by Diana Prince and Jon Stewart about the appearance of Superman on Earth. There are two more miniseries, Red Hood and Generation Joker, neither of which were written by Murphy, so I pause my review at this point. In my opinion, White Knight is an example of a direction both Marvel and DC should explore further. Let me explain. Both companies face the same problem. They have leaned into all their titles taking place in a shared universe with a shared continuity. Originally, this was a background element and a novelty that fans enjoyed. It was interesting knowing your favorite characters coexisted in the same space, even if they never interacted. But now, this element is in the forefront. Every title is interconnected and influenced by the fictional universe around it. There are no autonomous titles. A series doesn't just have to worry about its own continuity, it has to be aware of the continuity of that entire universe. So far, the Murphyverse exists outside any developments in the DC universe. It does work as an entry point for a new reader who may want an ongoing, self-contained Batman story, one that's not beholden to the other Bat Family titles or the DC universe. And it seems to be successful, at least successful enough that Murphy is allowed to continue. In my opinion, the model of a creator or creative team working on a single title or a series of limited-run titles should be explored further. The important point is to not do a group of interconnected ongoing titles, like the recently relaunched Ultimate Universe, but to focus on a single story in a single series, or multiple limited series. In the end, as mentioned earlier, the Murphyverse is a soft recommendation. Murphy's writing and excellent artwork is very consistent, and there is a clear direction to the series. It may not be to everyone's tastes, but it is something different. And again, it is consistent. Thank you for watching. Please give this video a like, leave a comment, and if you're not subscribed, do that too. Let this platform know there's demand for this type of material, because, well, the past month has been pretty rough for this channel, and I definitely need any and all support. A link to my Patreon is down below, and I would be grateful if you could back my humble efforts. So that's my pitch. Please support this channel. With that said, thanks to all my fine supporters on YouTube and Patreon. I highly appreciate that ongoing support. Thank you so very, very much. Extra special thanks to Jeff Nicholson, Sicken, Francis De La Cruz, John Nyugs, Andrew Barton, Odin Ashcroft, Ruby St. Dennis, Phil Sagan, Edward Clayton Andrews, Corey Drew, L.S. Gregor, Alexa Zernish, Brian Deaton, and Matt Marino. You are all justified and ancient.